Hey kiddos! So first, I'm getting sick, so if I'm not talking loud enough or if I'm coughing, I'm very sorry. I'm catching a cold, so I'm going to try my best to deliver this case to you as best as possible. Today's case is one that may be sensitive to a lot of people, so I'm just going to give a quick disclaimer before we start. This video contains child violence and sexual assault to a child. If you are sensitive to child violence, then this is probably not the video for you. I also want to remind you that I don't claim any of these things in my videos to be facts. It's just information that I compiled from different websites online. This video is for educational purposes, and I do not mean any disrespect to anybody that I talk about in my videos. Alright, it's Katie from Theorensic bringing you another case. This case really hits home for me and has been ingrained in my mind. I can't help but replay the events over and over in my head and confusion about what happened. Dawn Shaw was a 6-year-old girl living in an average town named Courtenay, BC. Courtenay had about 12,000 residents as of 1992. Giving a little backstory to the neighborhood she lived in. This neighborhood was known to be safe and caring and filled with children and warm families. This neighborhood was known to be low income, and many of the people who lived there at the time were on welfare. Right behind Dawn's house there was an elementary school, and beside the school there was a forested area that led to another neighborhood. The neighborhood was filled with life, but if that's the way it stayed, this video would be very short. On Saturday, October 24th, Carol Shaw called her 3 children in for the evening. However, when only 2 of her 3 children came in, her 10-year-old Anthony and her 4-year-old Robin, she knew that something was very wrong. Carol asked for the help of her neighbors to find her missing daughter, and a police patrol who was responding to a different unrelated call also heard that there was a girl missing in the area and also came to help. At 8:40 p.m., Lloyd Doucette was searching for the girl on the far side of the playground. When he came to a junction in the footpaths that were by the forested area, he came across 6-year-old Dawn Shaw's body. Dawn's body was naked and covered in fresh leaves, and her legs were splayed. Dawn had large bruises and scratches all over her body. She also had dirt smeared all over her chest, her cheek, her nose, and her upper lip, which was in the shape of a diamond shoe print. When Lloyd Doucette found Dawn Shaw's body, she was still warm. Investigators were immediately put on the case, and within 4 hours they already had a person of interest in mind. Jason. Jason Gamache was Dawn's next-door neighbor. He was known as a friendly boy who loved children. He was a trusted babysitter for all of the neighborhood kids and was recommended almost every day. Jason was even captain of his secondary school's rugby team, and he was also part of the Sea Cadets. Now, if you aren't Canadian and you don't know what the Sea Cadets are, here is a direct quote from their website. Quote, "The Royal Canadian Sea Cadets is a civilian youth program delivered in partnership by the Navy League of Canada and the Department of National Defence. The Sea Cadet program was open for youth between the ages of 12 and 18. There are nearly 8,000 Sea Cadets active in 230 communities across Canada." After the discovery of Dawn's body, Jason was actually watching Carol Shaw's other 2 children. Since police saw him as a person of interest, he had his name put into the computer, where they found that he was actually involved in 2 smaller cases. No one in the neighborhood was aware that Jason was already on probation for 2 other sexual assaults. Jason was arrested for sexually assaulting 2 younger children in the place where he used to live with his mom in another town. In March of 1991, Jason lured a boy into his home with the promise of a toy. Jason made the younger boy perform oral sex in order to get the reward of the toy. Eventually, the boy told his parents, and the parents told the police. 2 months after Jason's first offense, he lured another younger girl into his father's bedroom. He undressed the girl and attempted to make her do the same as the younger boy before her. When she refused, he let her dress and go home. She then told her parents, and her parents told the police. In November of 1991, Jason pled guilty to 2 criminal charges. He was then put on 24-month probation, but because he was under the age of 18, his name was never publicized because they wanted to protect his identity. By the end of 1991, Dale Gamache, Jason's father, moved with him to Courtenay, as dictated by the John Howard Society program. It was a treatment program for adolescent sex offenders. Jason seemed to be doing much better by this point. Many people thought that there was reasons to hope this teen's life would get back on track. Nicole, Jason's mother, took over the care for her son for a reason I could not find. They moved to a low-rent housing complex into a townhouse. The townhouse was next to the elementary school. At this point, Jason's life was getting right back on track. He joined the Sea Cadets. He was recommended highly to be a babysitter for the entire neighborhood, and was doing great in his rugby team. Or so we thought. One of Jason's probation orders was not to go near any children under the age of 12. This information was very suspicious to the police because they knew that Dawn's body had been sexually assaulted before she was murdered. Police went straight to the Gamache's residence and asked Jason what he'd been up to that night. Jason admitted to playing a game of hide-and-seek with the neighborhood children, but then he said that the game ended only 10 minutes later. When police left, Nicole asked him point blank, "Did you do it?" And Jason responded with, "No, I didn't." Police left the home, but they weren't ready to give up this lead. They came back not even 4 hours later with a search warrant. They asked him again if Jason had any involvement, but Jason calmly stood by his original statement. Police didn't ask him any more questions, but did take the clothes that Jason was wearing the day before. A purple and black tracksuit and some black and white sneakers. Jason was unbothered by any suspicions the police had about him. He even agreed to take a polygraph test. Before he took the test, he said to his mother, quote, "We've got nothing to worry about, Mom. I didn't do it." Jason was flown by helicopter to Victoria, where he would complete a 3-hour-long test. Each time when the police asked if he had killed Dawn, he replied with no. A polygraph specialist took a look at the results and concluded that he was being truthful and he passed the polygraph test. When he returned home, he made himself out to be more than innocent. He helped neighbors decorate pink ribbons all over the neighborhood in memory of Dawn. He also openly talked about the fact that he was a suspect. His rugby coach stated, quote, "He wasn't bragging. He wasn't apprehensive or nervous. There was no noticeable sign that something had happened," end quote. On the morning of December 17th, Jason and his mother were called back into the RCMP office, where the officer concluded the research that they had found. The DNA testing on his clothing, his shoes, Dawn's corpse, and the clothing that was left behind from Dawn. They had found red and black threads that were on Dawn's discarded clothing items, which matched Jason's tracksuit that he was wearing the day before. They also found red fibers from the Afghan that was on the Gamache's couch, which was right by where they watched TV. And lastly, the diamond-shaped shoe print that was on the bottom of Jason's shoes matched the shoe print that was on Dawn's face. The police officer then says, "Okay, why don't you tell me what happened?" Jason asked for his mother to be present. His new statement was that he was walking Dawn to the school playground. Then he lifted her onto his shoulders and quickly ran off to the forested area. Jason was teary as he explained what he did next. He said he took off all her clothes and forced her to the ground. He said the sexual assault didn't last long because he was interrupted by Dawn's brother calling for his sister. Jason says, quote, "I didn't have time to warn her or threaten her with anything so she wouldn't end up telling, right? And I just lost control. I grabbed her by the throat and I started to choke her. Then I jumped on her. I just jumped straight up and landed on her." The next day, Gamache was followed with a camera to retrace the steps of the events that took place. He said, quote, "She called for her mom, probably at the top of her lungs, which ain't very loud," end quote. His attitude had changed from teary like it was the previous day to flippant. When the tape played later in court, it left no doubt that Jason was responsible for what happened to Dawn that night. Many people said that he was a psychopath and that he showed many symptoms and had lots of tendencies the same of which a psychopath would. Others say he suffers from multiple personality disorder, and the reason he passed his polygraph test was because it wasn't him, but his alternate ego, Carl, which was also his middle name. The truth is, nobody knew what sick and twisted things were going on in Jason's mind. Jason said that he hoped that there would be a treatment program that would make his personality of Jason and Carl blend together so that his bad personality was kind of canceled out by his good personality. He insisted that until then, he wouldn't be released. After nearly 2 years in custody, Jason says that he actually likes Carl because it gives him an advantage in the prison system. Jason would be about 40 or 41 now, but he actually died in prison. It was labeled suicide because he was found hanging, but it is speculated that the people in the prison actually killed him. Alright, that's the end of this case. I want to give a huge thanks to my parents who gave me details about the case. My mother actually knew Don Shaw. They were neighbors and they used to play together as children. And my father was friends with Jason, but did not know what sick things were going on with him. If you have any more questions about the case, please let me know, and I would be more than happy to give a follow-up video for you guys to explain a little bit more if you need it. Thank you so much for watching. This was Katie, signing off. Bye.